Good morning, boys and girls. I wanted to go over with you what you have to do today for science since there is no Google Meet live session today. What you need to do first is you need to come, and I'm going to assign this to you in Buzz, the Life Cycle Review. This is your discussion-based assessment questions that you will be reflecting on when you fill out your discussion-based assessment paper in the module 11, the one that we have been working on for life cycles in, um, in science. So here are some of the questions. What stage of the life cycle is shown in the image? In this image, what stage of the life cycle are the horses in? A turtle has laid its fertilized eggs in the sand. What stage of the life cycle will come next? Your pet dog just had puppies. What stage of the life cycle are the puppies in? Which of the following shows the correct life cycle stages for complete metamorphosis? So here are your choices. Which of the following shows the correct life cycle stages for incomplete metamorphosis? In the event where the biggest changes happen to change a young insect to an adult. So what is the event? Which of the following animals would you expect metamorphosis to occur in? Unlike other animals, insects change in a protective covering during their life cycle. What do we call this change if the insect's life cycle has 4 distinct stages? A grasshopper is an insect that goes through 3 distinct stages during its life cycle. The life cycle of a grasshopper is an example of which one of the following? Which part of the life cycle below shows a pupa in complete metamorphosis? Which part of the complete metamorphosis life cycle below shows a larva? Which part of the complete metamorphosis life cycle below shows an egg? Which stage in incomplete metamorphosis is shown in stage 2? Which stage in incomplete metamorphosis is shown in stage 1? Which stage in incomplete metamorphosis is shown in stage 3? During complete metamorphosis, what best describes the transformation from a larva to a pupa? What happens in the development of insects that go through a nymph stage during incomplete metamorphosis? During complete metamorphosis, what best describes what happens to the insect when it moves from the pupa stage to the adult stage? Ladybugs and butterflies both go through complete metamorphosis. What is common between the life cycles of a ladybug and a butterfly? Grasshoppers and praying mantises both go through incomplete metamorphosis. What is common between the life cycles of a grasshopper and a praying mantis? Crickets go through incomplete metamorphosis. A cricket will hatch from an egg and slowly develop in the nymph stage until it becomes an adult. Ladybugs go through complete metamorphosis. What will happen during the ladybug's development instead of the nymph stage? Which statement describes the changes that are happening to a butterfly during its larva stage? Which statement describes the changes that are happening to the butterfly during its pupa stage? Which statement describes the changes that are occurring during the nymph stage of the shield bug? Taylor wrote about a metamorphosis of a grasshopper. Read the passage to find Taylor's mistake. Then choose the statement that has the correct information. Brandon wrote about the metamorphosis of a butterfly. Read the passage and find Brandon's mistake. Then choose the statement that has the correct information. Tony wrote about the metamorphosis of an ant in his ant farm. Read the passage and find Tony's mistake. Then choose the statement that has the correct information. So this is your booklet to review before you take the Module 8 assessment. You will take the Module 8 test, and I'm going to go through the Nearpods for Lesson 9.1 for the next module. Module 9.1, this first lesson is a 3-day lesson, but I'm going to go through these Nearpods for you now. Remember, after I go through the Nearpods, it's your job to go back and reread the information in the lesson on Buzz. Read through the triad activities, discuss the enrichment activities, and have discussions with someone about what you learned. Don't forget to submit your review and reflection or your discussion-based analysis paper in to me after you have done the booklet. Okay, so the Module 8 test, there is a question on the test that has to do with a stage of a life cycle that they misname, and it is about a hatchling. Don't worry about that question. Just answer it as best as you can, and I will give you the correct credit for the answer. All right, let's look at Nearpod for Lesson 9.1. Like I said, this is going to be a Nearpod video. I will link this in Buzz for you guys. When I put this in Buzz, I'm going to be making it a student-based lesson for you to take your time and complete. So Science Lesson 9.01, Inherited Characteristics of Plants. Even plants and animals inherit characteristics from either their parent plant or their parent animal. Has anyone ever told you you have your mother's eyes or you look just like your dad? Well, that's because it's true. Plants and animals, including humans, all inherit characteristics from the way they look, their size, and even their ability to survive. It's all thanks to the parents. So, in this lesson, you should be able to identify the characteristics of plants and animals that are inherited and explain that characteristics of plants and animals are inherited from parents by their offspring. So you're identifying what the characteristics are, and then you're explaining that they're inherited from the parents through the offspring. Plants and offspring. Characteristics of living things are passed down from parent to offspring. An offspring is a child or a baby plant. Characteristics can include how a living thing looks, survives, and how it behaves from day to day. All living things have characteristics that define who they are. For example, roses have bright, colorful flowers, thorny stems, and oval shaped leaves. These characteristics are groups of traits that identify most roses. A trait is a specific characteristic of a living thing, such as thorns on the stems of some roses. Not all roses have thorns, so a trait can vary among a specific group of living things. Some roses have thorns and some roses do not, but a rose is still a rose and has inherited characteristics. Inherited means they're passed down. You get them from your parents, so your parents pass down these traits to you. Or in the case of a plant, the parent plant has the specific characteristic inside that seed, and it is passed down to the seed for the next plant.
Hello, students. I hope you're wild about science today because Mr. Joe and I certainly are. Today we're going to talk about inherited traits in plants. Did you know that plants inherit characteristics or traits from their parents? Wow, that's amazing. So, like plants, a mom and a pop have a baby that's very similar to the same traits that they have? I like the way you said that. Plants have a mom and a pop, and that baby is just like those two parents. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Redmond? Maybe not just like, no more than you're just like your parents, but they're a little bit like their parents. In fact, a whole lot like their parents. We have a lot to choose from today. I'm going to start with these guys right here. These bushes, they may not, they are all different. They may have different parents, but they certainly look a lot alike, don't they, Mr. Joe? Boy, they look identical to my eye. Well, they may have had a bunch of different parents, but they got planted here, and they all look pretty much the same. And what about these guys down here? Wow. These guys look a lot different from those guys. These guys are called cycads. I just happen to know that name. And they are a strange plant. Their seeds grow from the ground. You'll notice the seeds are growing right out of the ground on these plants, which I think is super cool. Anyway, the cycads, they inherited this trait from their parents, and all cycads kind of look the same. Then if we walk right over here, what is this guy, Mrs. Joe? That's a beautiful tree. Boy, is that tall, Mr. Andrews. It's tall. You think it inherited the tallness from its parents? I think so. I mean, it would be funny. I don't think a cycad ever gets anywhere close to being this big, and I don't think those bushes will ever get close to being anywhere near this big. This palm tree inherited the trait for tallness from its parents. Wow. Hey, Mr. Joe, what was that you were saying about the bark of trees? Well, I was drawing a comparison to this bark to my skin. They're both the outer layer, and they both protect your innards, if you will. Okay, this protects this tree from insects and animals, and it's very, very important. Sometimes the bark's the same on every tree. No, and we were going to talk about that, Mr. Randy. You know, one of the things that you can do, and it's an inherited trait, is the bark. And the bark on I think this is a live oak, is different than that bark that we looked over there when we were looking at the palm. And one of the things we can do is we can actually get a rubbing of the bark. And I think this is really cool. And it kind of gives you like a fingerprint of that tree. And I'm going to do one right now if you can watch, Mr. Randy. Okay. If you want me to hold it, I'll help you. Well, I think that's pretty good. Wow. It's kind of picking up the high spots. And I think I see the fingerprint. That is so cool, Mr. Joe. Wow. And it's something that anybody kind of could do this. And it kind of is like the fingerprint of this beautiful live oak. And I can put this in my science journal and label it an oak. Wait a second, Mr. Joe. This sounds like a challenge. Yeah, that would be great if students could actually walk around, see a tree, and do a rubbing. Label it and keep it in your science journal. I think it'd be super.
Okay, so young and adult plants. Bean plants. These are young bean plants. The adult plant. This is an adult bean plant. You can tell because their leaves are the same shape. They also have green flexible stems. Tomato plants. This is a young tomato plant. The adult plant. You can tell this is an adult tomato plant because they have similar leaves and stems. They produce the same fruit, but the offspring's fruit is still small and has not turned red yet. So, the peony plant. This is a young peony plant, and the adult peony plant, you can tell because they both have similar stems and the petal shapes. A ball cactus. This is a young ball cactus. You can tell they are the parent and offspring because they have the same shape. Also, they both have the same colors and sharp spines. So, in order to think like a scientist, how can you tell if two plants are related? They will have similar characteristics, of course. Observe the images of the two plants and determine the characteristics you find similar between them. What characteristics do you find that are different? Do you think these two plants are parent and offspring? So if you can, talk to somebody about that. Show them the picture, read the question with them, and see if you can find similarities and differences and determine whether the plants are parent and offspring. Passing on characteristics. Let's take a look at how these two plants compared by observing their similarities. Leaf is the same size. If they are, you'd put a check mark. The stem is the same. If it was, you put a check mark. The color is the same. Check mark. The larger tree has been living and growing for many years, and the smaller tree is younger and is its offspring. How do we know this is true? The offspring has inherited characteristics from the parent, such as the unique shape of the leaves. The leaf shape is the same for the two trees because the trait is inherited. Maple trees. Click and drag the green box at the bottom of the slide to reveal the answer. Well, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that, but identify the characteristics that were inherited by the offspring from the parent. So click and drag the green box at the bottom of the slide to reveal the answer. Corn plants. Click and drag the green box at the bottom of the slide to reveal the answer. So identify the characteristics that were inherited by the offspring from the parent. Click and drag the box to find the answer. So every plant is unique in its own way. Observe the sunflower and identify the characteristics of the plant that will be. Now, there's misconceptions. Plants are not always identical to their parents. For example, plants can produce offspring that have the same flowers, but the color of the petals might be different. So, why do I look like you? All living things inherit the characteristics from their parents. Traits that are passed down from parent to offspring can vary in how they appear. For example, the petal color of these carnations are slightly different from each other, but they are still carnations. Let's take some time to practice identifying characteristics in offspring that are inherited from their parents. So you're going to be able to view some pictures and match them. You're going to match the offspring plant to their parent by identifying characteristics that were inherited. So this is some of the plants and the offspring that you're going to be seeing. So practice like a scientist. This is optional. In this activity, you'll get a better understanding of inherited characteristics. You can print Identifying Characteristics activity sheet and follow the instructions. Like we said, it's optional. You don't have to do it. Okay, now you're going to have a fill in the blank. Young plants often look like parent because they inherit the characteristics of the adult plant. Which characteristics has the offspring inherited from the parent? It'll show you on your screen what you need to do. Which characteristic has the offspring inherited from the parent, from the tomato plant? So this is day 2 of Science Lesson 9.01. This too, I believe, will be a Nearpod. So here we're looking at animals and their offspring. Since the offspring from plants inherit characteristics from their parents, is it the same for animals? If a goose has dark feathers, webbed feet, and a beak, will the goslings have all of these characteristics as well? In some cases, offspring do not look like their parents when they are born. What happens when they grow up to become mature adults? So, write like a scientist. Make a list of all the characteristics you think you inherited from your parents. Inheriting characteristics animals. Mammals inherit certain characteristics from their parents that make them unique. The offspring inherit their parents' fur type, number of legs, and facial features. Reptiles inherit characteristics like the number of legs, body shape, type and number of teeth, and scales for their body coverage. Fish inherit scales as their body covering and the number and shape of fins they have for swimming. Bird offspring inherit their wings, beaks, and feathers from their parents. The feathers often don't look the same as the parents' feathers when the offspring are young, but they will change over time. Amphibian offspring inherit their skin color, body shape, size, number of legs from their parents. Arthropod offspring inherit their number of legs, number of body segments, and colors of their body from parents. So you're going to watch a video about inherited traits. Now, there are some misconceptions. Animals don't inherit their characteristics from just one parent. They inherit them from both parents. And some characteristics are inherited from the mother, and some are inherited from the father. In addition, the characteristics that you get from your mother and father can be different from your brother or sister. So everyone is unique. You get it from your parents. Animals pass on specific characteristics that identify the type of animal they are. For example, a snake is a reptile that is covered in scales. Therefore, we can assume the offspring of a snake will also have scales. Likewise, a bear is a mammal that has fur. Again, we can assume the offspring of a bear will also have fur. Characteristics help identify types of living things. We would not see fur on a fish because fish have scales. We would not see wings on a pig because pigs cannot fly. All living things have specific characteristics that were passed down from their parents that help identify who or what they are. Which characteristics has the baby crocodile inherited from the parent? Click and drag the green box at the bottom of the slide to reveal the answer. Which characteristics has the baby gazelle inherited from its parent? Click the green box to reveal the answer. Which characteristic has the baby dolphin inherited from the parent? Which characteristic has the baby sea turtle inherited from the parent? And here's another video. The Inherited Traits Song, Science for Kids. Traits and survival. Imagine if a crayfish suddenly grew long, bright feathers, or a lion had a beak and pincers. Not only would that be an unusual sight, but these animals would not be able to survive without the proper characteristics handed down to them from their parents. Crayfish were meant to have pincers to catch for their food, so colorful feathers may not be a helpful replacement. Okay, so they'll ask you a question, and here are your answers. You would choose the best one. You're going to have another fill in the blank activity. Okay. And now day 3. Day 3, inherited characteristics, plants and animals. This too will be a Nearpod. So similar traits in plants. The characteristics of living things are passed on to their offspring. We know this because some characteristics of the offspring are similar to those of the parents. How do you know these plants are parent and offspring? We know the fern plants are related because the offspring has long green feather-like leaves similar to the parent fern. The characteristics of living things are passed on to their offspring. How do you know these plants are parent and offspring? The parent and offspring both have apples and the same leaf shape. How do you know these plants are parent and offspring? They both have the same petal shape and thorns on their stems. How do you know these plants are parent and offspring? They both have thick stems and prickly spines for leaves. How do we know these plants are parent and offspring? They both have pine cones and long waxy needles for leaves. How do we know these animals are parent and offspring? We know the animals are related because the offspring has spotted fur, 4 legs, small ears, and a long tail similar to the parent. Which characteristics did the baby elephant inherit from its parents? The baby elephant inherited its long trunk, gray color, 4 legs, and big ears from its parents. Now, what did the baby heron inherit? The baby heron inherited their white feathers, wings, and long beaks from their parent. Which characteristic did the puppies inherit? The puppies inherited their color, fluffy fur, 4 legs, and tails from their parents. What did the baby camel inherit? The baby camel inherited its 4 legs, fur color, and humps on its back from its parents. No matter how unusual some characteristics are, you can be certain that many of them will be passed down from parent to offspring. A Japanese spider crab looks just as its name implies. It looks like a cross between a spider and a crab with long legs that can reach over 5 meters in length. That's a big characteristic to pass on. So this plant grows tomatoes. The offspring inherits similarly shaped leaves, leaf color, stem, and the shape of the fruit from its parents. The animal has stripes like a zebra and a long neck like a giraffe. It's called an okapi. And a baby okapi inherits its striped legs, brown fur, and long neck from its parents. This is a ring-tailed lemur. The baby lemur inherits its long striped tail, large eyes, and gripping hands and feet from its parents. I love how lemurs look. They're so cute. So what did you learn? In this lesson, you learned about inherited characteristics and that they are passed down from parent to offspring. Fur, horns, feathers, stripes, and spots are all characteristics that can be inherited by animals. Leaf shape, cones, needles, spines, and bark are all characteristics that can be inherited by plants. We can tell when living things are related because the parents and their offsprings look similar to each other. The passing on of characteristics is important for the survival of all living things. So now you can identify the characteristics of plants and animals that are inherited, and you can describe or explain how characteristics are passed down from parent to offspring. And then there will be a time to climb. Okay, so that is our Module 8 overview of today's lessons. Remember to do your DBA reflection and submit it to me. Do your Module 8 test, do your best, and then go through these Nearpods and read Lesson 9.01 and take the pretest. And don't forget, your TDA is due on Friday. There will be no late exceptions. It has to be in by Friday. Okay, boys and girls, have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow morning, either at 9 or at 10. If you need to do TDA, come in at 9, and our regular social studies lesson will begin at 10. Thanks. Have a great day.